see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. In this episode, you got myself and my co-host, Liza, the Occult Reject Mad Scientist. What is going on, Liza? How are you?
Just fine. Looking forward to this. More stuff on the fruits of that one thread that was pulled, and now so much information has been switched forward. So I'm very much looking forward to your work, Daniel. So, yes, excited.
That is something I even want to mention, too, before we introduce the guest. Luckily, because of a prior guest, Justin, LDS of Views, he had put us in touch with Daniel DeFranco. And he has a very, very interesting story, I guess, or very information to present. I watched his work on YouTube. I thought it was very well done. He showed a lot of pictures, a lot of receipts, just like Justin did. And when I checked out his stuff, I was like, yo, this would be a great topic. And it's just awesome how that one guest ended up leading into I don't know how many amazing shows, and now we got another one here that I'm assuming is just going to be just as interesting and just as good as Justin. So I'm very excited for this. I really am. And that's and then we'll get to it now. I'll shut up. We got Daniel DeFranco, and Daniel, let everybody know, I guess whatever you're comfortable with or how much of a time you want to spend, a little bit about yourself, and I guess what got you into even covering this topic.
Sure. Well, first, I'll talk a little bit about the topic. It's a man by the name of Herbert Armstrong, and he was the leader of a church denomination in the 1900s. And man, that makes me feel old when I say the 1900s, but it was. And I was a part of it as a kid. So we started going. I was less than a year old, so that would have been 1977. And we went up and through Herbert when he died in 86, and we left in about 93. And so we went to a lot of getting into the history of worldwide. It broke up into a million different pieces, that's a whole nother story. But we went with a break-off group for like 2 years. And since then, I've just been independent. So it was definitely a formative thing in my life. But I put it on the back shelf until I was with a bunch of people and we were talking about Freemasonry. And I woke up the next morning with the words research Freemasonry in my head. And all of a sudden I started recollecting all the stuff from my childhood. See, worldwide was, we didn't meet in halls, or we met in rented facilities. So we didn't own our own buildings. Most, or I wouldn't say most, but a good high percentage of churches met in Masonic halls. And so then I just started doing more and more research, and the stuff I saw blew my mind. So why don't we talk about Herbert Armstrong, the founder of the church? So he was born in 1892 in Des Moines, Iowa, and he was, I think he was a Quaker, which that's a whole nother thing. Quakers are a little odd, but he always wanted to be somebody because, he wrote an autobiography. That's highly narcissistic to write an autobiography, but so, he mentioned like when he was 16, 17 years old, he was always enamored with really important people. Loved Benjamin Franklin, loved this guy named Elbert Hubbard, which was actually L. Ron Hubbard's adoptive uncle. So Herbert got into advertising, moved to Chicago, was very successful with it. I think at one point in today's dollars, he was making, over $1 million a year at, 22 years old. Got married, and then he had some ups and downs. The Depression happened. And his wife found religion. Now, she didn't just find any religion. She found Christianity, but different doctrines. For instance, they kept the Seventh-day Sabbath. They kept the feast days. They didn't eat pork, things like that. And so they found a group called the Church of God Seventh Day, which was a break-off from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So this would have been, I think, 1926, that his wife, Loma, got interested in religion, but she challenged him. With these beliefs, and so he went in and studied, and he was convinced himself. So he had a hard time getting along with everybody, and before long started his own group. But that was precipitated. Boy, I can't talk. With getting on the radio. He wasn't one of the first radio evangelists, but he was, early on. And I think he found success almost right away. And so what he started doing was, he had a circuit up in Oregon. That's where they had moved to, Eugene. And then he got on Portland and then Seattle. And then he starts going down to Hollywood to do the tapes, more taping. And then he realized, wow, I don't have to actually go in person to these places. I can spread them out. So next thing you know, it's nationwide. He gets on TV in the early 50s, probably one of the first televangelists.
It says that he was like a pioneer in that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the radio, I think in the late 40s, they were prime time 6 days a week. So everybody heard their name, and they had a whole different way of they didn't really proselytize. They gave away free literature, but the thing I'd really like to get into today is what happened next. So he starts a college, 1947, to create ministers for this church, because they started off just called the Radio Church of God. They didn't have congregations, but there was so many people asked for congregations that, okay, let's do some congregations, but everyone had to speak what Herbert spoke. So he starts a college, and here he's like 55 at the time, and he gets all these 18-year-old kids that saw him on the radio and saw him on TV, and then he just starts cranking them out.
This guy's handing down the law to people, huh?
What's that?
He's like handing down the law to people.
Oh yeah. And so that's where the mind control gets in, because it was very streamlined. It was uniformed in a way I've never seen, like beyond the military.
Well, you know what's even interesting with that? Even if you go ahead and come up with that idea and like you fill those seats real quick, that already is telling you right there that people you got a shot at manipulating people's thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Because he was a salesman, not only a salesman, but an advertising guy, he knew how to, like, for instance, he didn't say kingdom of God. He said the world tomorrow. So he branded aspects of what he did, which made it sound different, but two, some of the doctrines that he taught were different from mainstream Christianity. I mean, it was an amalgamation of Seventh-day Adventist, Jehovah's Witness, a little bit of Mormonism. It was kind of a smorgasbord of some of that, but it was different. And at the time, World War II especially, people were terrified. And so that's what he was talking about. His broadcast was like a mix of the news and Bible prophecy, and here's how you can escape this. Here's how you can be protected with all the craziness going on. So he really played on people's fears. And so the church grew phenomenally in the 50s and 60s. But when his wife died in 1967, that's where everything changed. And that's pretty much what I'd like to talk about today, is immediately he starts meeting with world leaders. Yeah. Like a light switch went on. And so in his autobiography, he mentions three things that happened in 1960, end of 67, early 68. One was he started hanging out with King Leopold III of Belgium. He started hanging out with Prince Mikasa of Japan, who was Hirohito's brother, and got access to dig at the Temple Mount for 20 years with his college.
That's impressive.
Oh, I haven't even started.
Oh, I know. It's even from the stuff that I've seen you cover already. This is so much more. So much more.
I mean, I've shown some friends some of this, and they as soon as they're kind of conspiratorial minded, and once the light bulb that went off, they're like, oh my goodness, this is one heck of a rabbit trail. So that's how it started. So King Leopold, interesting guy, he actually abdicated the throne. That's really all that I know about him, is that he, like, when the Nazis came in during World War II, he kind of threw his hands up, and then later on, nobody wanted him back, so he left, and then his son took over. But I've read somewhere that he was a Bilderberger. I don't know that for sure. I haven't substantiated that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Prince Mikasa, it's Hirohito's brother, so he knew a lot of people around the world. He had an affinity for Israel. He spoke fluent Hebrew, and he was over there all the time. That's just an interesting connection. But those meetings started with those two main things, and what his autobiography said was, in both cases, somebody got a copy of the church's yearbook, the college yearbook, and that they were so impressed, they showed these leaders, and they just had to meet the guy who was head of this college, which, I mean, if you're going to have a cover story, come up with something a little bit better than that. You know, I think there was something definitely deeper than that, but that was the official narrative. And then from there, who didn't he meet with? And
you know,
so
it's interesting that you said college. That a long time ago, I attended Texas A&M University, and the president that they had all of a sudden put in was Robert Gates. And I was like, I didn't even know he was a professor. I didn't really realize that he, like I didn't know he was in academia. And I come to find out Robert Gates ended up, what's his name? Robert Gates, the Secretary of Defense for Bush, W? No, was it W? And then he stayed on for Obama. And it was told to me when I inquired with certain people that usually universities are holding places for people in the wait for bigger positions. So I don't know, you just mentioned that. I don't know if this is exactly what was happening as well.
Well, the Church Commission back in '75, which has been the only real investigation into the CIA, which I think only scratched the surface, they said on record they had 80 universities that they partnered with for different things, MK Ultra and things of that nature.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, I think
anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It just you jogged it, and I was like, I better say this before I forget.
I'll shut up too.
I mean, and the more you dig into this, those of us that grew up in a particular, maybe like in this case, a church or a college, we think small-minded that it just happened to us, and then you start realizing, oh my goodness, what didn't they have their fingers in?
Yeah.
And real quick before we move forward, Daniel, anytime you want me to pull up your slides, just let me know.
Okay, yeah, probably here just in a minute. Let me just double check my notes.
Wanted to make sure that we didn't pass them because you felt bad asking or I forgot to bring them up. Yeah, just let me know and I got you. No worries.
Well, actually, yeah. Why don't we? Give me 1 second. And
whenever we get to them.
Yeah, from 1968 to 1985, he met with over 300 leaders of 83 different nations, and a number of these leaders he met with multiple times. The nation that he went to the most, be far and above any other, was Israel. He met all 7 prime ministers, all 7 presidents. He was good friends with Teddy Kollek, the mayor of Jerusalem. In a 4-year span, he went to Israel 50 times. That's like a little over once a month. So that was number 1 by far, was Israel. Second was Japan. He met with all 7 prime ministers of Japan in that time period. He was awarded by Hirohito for his help in getting Okinawa reverted back to Japan. And this is all the stuff that I had to dig to find. None of this was in the newspapers. It was like there was a complete blackout.
And you heard Justin, I think it was on the 3rd episode, where you're having those the men that he covered, how they were also taking these visits to Israel often, several times a month if you calculate it or whatever. And so you have this very close-knit tie to Israel.
All roads seem to lead there at some point. And I know there's a lot of rabbit trails that go down there. And I know there's misinformation and disinformation, but it seems like the people that really pull the string have set up shop over there.
One thing I had thought about too, and I don't want to get too far off base or even get too far out there, but not to bring up Nazi type stuff, but who's to say, we hear that, a lot of Nazi people came over here because of paperclip, and I think supposedly Russia. But I mean, who's to say Israel isn't filled with Nazis as well? Just because they supposedly, kind of lost, they're trying to accomplish what they accomplished. It does not mean that they have not infiltrated or they're not over there.
But Daniel, don't you think it's such a juxtaposition that you have so much resounding visiting and associating with Israel, but yet so much of the Nazi ideology, as well as the practices, as well as banks, as well as all kinds of ties to Nazism at the same time.
And another reason I even bring up Nazism, Daniel, is because, like, here on the show, our listeners probably understand it, where I was going with that. Maybe you're not getting it, but, like, even when it comes to, like, kind of, like, cult-minded activity, I do think that has a lot to do with occultism, and I think there's a Nazi influence in there, because I do think Nazism is very much more occult than people realize.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It almost seems like Nazi Germany was a petri dish for the occultists. Like it gave them carte blanche to do whatever they wanted and all these experiments. And then once the war ended, they, instead of squashing all that, Operation Paperclip, on all that, I'm sure you guys are aware of it. That was valuable information to them that they didn't want to lose. So like, I think so much of it's smoke and mirrors and, a horse and pony show for the average person. They make it out to be this is, but at the top, they're all in cahoots with each other at some level. I mean, I'm sure there's infighting, but like in a lot of ways, they all want the same thing, but they probably all want to be in charge themselves. So I'm sure there's that type of infighting, but yeah, it's just, most of them are into some nasty stuff. And in the last 20 years or so, we're starting to, see more of that. So.
All right, sorry to interrupt. Continue, sir.
No, absolutely. Go ahead. Well, why don't we go through some of the slides, because visuals help, and I think people will really maybe have their eyes open to some of this. So, okay, most of Herbert's meetings were not in Europe. And the ones that were in Europe, most of them were not televised or photographed. So I've got two of him with Prince Charles, now King Charles. They met with him, I think, 6 times. So here's one meeting with Charles. There's another meeting with Charles. That one's got the date. Yeah, that was 82.
June 7th, 1982. Very good.
This, he met with Margaret Thatcher. There was no photograph. This was the only photograph anybody got, was of him going to her house. So that was a closed meeting.
Interesting, Margaret Thatcher.
This is King Leopold of Belgium. So Herbert and him became very good friends. Like, he would fly on Herbert's plane with him around the world. He introduced Herbert to a lot of the leaders early on.
There we go. Sorry.
That's another picture of Leopold. He came to the college and everything. There was a number of these leaders that came to the college in Pasadena. Yeah, that's one more. Of him on the right. On the left, that's a guy named Franz Joseph Strauss, which was an architect with Europe reuniting. And one thing I didn't mention is that the church had a magazine called the Plain Truth Magazine. It was mostly a news magazine, but it had a slight religious bent. At one point, I think it got up to 8 million circulation.
Oh, wow.
Now it was handed out for free, but you could also just, get on their mailing list and order it. So at the time, I mean, because I was in the church, we saw it all the time, but anybody probably over 50 years old remembers seeing it, which I think that's the next slide.
All right.
Yep. So that's Strauss there. He was one of the architects. Yeah. Herbert, quote unquote, prophesied that there was going to be a united Europe, but he was talking to all the guys that were going to do it. So I don't know how much of a prophecy that really was, but okay. So the church had their own internal magazine called the Worldwide News. They had another one called the Good News, and so like a lot of the clippings and stuff I got were from their internal materials. And you would see headlines like this all the time, because some people, they've asked me, it's like, okay, all this stuff going on, why didn't how come nobody connected the dots? Well, we were kept in the dark to a lot of things. We were given these cover stories. This was also 40, 50 years ago, pre-internet. This was, people were much more naive in the older generations as they are now. I don't know if it's because society was just different or whatever reason, but so this is the type of stuff we'd see. God's one chosen apostle, and see, he's preaching the gospel to all these world leaders, blah, 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 blah. So I think on the left there, that's one of the Israeli presidents, Navan. The right is Hosni Mubarak from Egypt. Okay. This is the first acting world leader that Herbert met with. I think this was 68. This is Israeli President Zalman Shazar, which he met with him after they gave him permission to do the 20-year excavation at the Temple Mount. Teddy Kollek, Herbert was very good friends with him. He was Jerusalem mayor for several terms. The guy on the left is a guy by the name of Stanley Rader. That was Herbert's assistant for a lot of the time. Stanley Rader was a Jew who never really converted to the church, but was like his right-hand man. He was a lawyer. He was the church accountant. Him and Herbert were just, I mean, they were like this. Herbert had a very, very tight circle of when he went on all these meetings. But Stan was with him most of the time. It's another picture of him and Teddy Kollek. That was just a picture in one of the articles about the archaeological digs that they were doing.
And Daniel, could you remind me again, I'm sorry, what was the premise for the archaeological dig? What was the I guess, the goal? Well, I mean, because they have to put in a proposal, don't they? And they have to get it approved, right? Well,
Hebrew University was going to do some digs there, and they partnered with Ambassador. So I don't know what the official story on that even was. I remember one time I read, like, he said that they're going to try to uncover David's throne so Christ can come sit on the throne and all that. It was rumored from some people I've talked to that they were actually searching for the Ark of the Covenant. Which there's a weird little thing coming up here that is, you'll see.
Ark of the Covenant, that's funny.
Okay, so Stan Rader, the guy I just mentioned, and his assistant, or a guy that helped him, named Robert Lawrence Kuhn, who's still alive. He has a show on PBS called Closer to the Truth. He's a bigwig, been decorated by Xi Jinping. He was also a Jew, never converted. They both sued George Lucas for the rights of Raiders of the Lost Ark because they said it was their script and it was stolen. And as far as I know, I was just
thinking about that, and that involves Nazis looking for the.
Yeah, I know. So it's just there's so many coincidences.
Well, when you said Ark of the Covenant, that was one of the missions that Hitler sent some of the Nazis into Israel to recover. It was that, and then the spear, as well as, oh goodness, the cloak, I think.
Yeah, I think you said there was
I'm sorry, the chalice. It was the chalice, the Ark of the Covenant, and the spear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if they actually, like, say somebody just whips out the Ark of the Covenant, the amount of people that just would say God has to be with them, no matter who it was, whether it's the Nazis or anybody, right? Yeah. And it's, I would not be surprised to see that happen later in the future. In fact, there's some rabbis, I guess I've read, that have said they've already found it.
Oh, geez.
So, and it was somewhere around this time period. So I don't know if that's why Worldwide was there to do the digs or not, but it's interesting.
Sorry.
Oh. Just wondering, like, could you even fake that?
Well, the Bible does give you the exact dimensions.
It's interesting.
I will say that. But again, if you look at it from the perspective of quantum mechanics and weaponry and all kinds of maybe other extraterrestrial, I don't mean aliens, I mean like non-Earth, whatever, you could potentially like woo a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just a picture of him, and if you look at, you can see his cufflink barely here in the picture. The next picture blows it up. Diamond hexagrams. I mean, some people call them the Star of the David. I think they're hexagrams.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get to a lot of the meetings he had with Israel. This is President.
That's what you get for going 50 times in 4 years.
What's that?
That's what they give you.
50 times in 4 years, yeah. So this is President Chaim Herzog. And once again, like a lot of these, there was just a picture, nothing with the meetings. About 6 meetings maybe had some video clips. So all these were closed door meetings with maybe a photo or two. Which Okay, that's just another picture. That let me interject something here really quick. So the narrative of the church was that Christ was God's one chosen apostle to go to the kings of the earth, preach the gospel. The counter narrative that to the people that didn't agree with this is Herbert was a narcissistic egomaniac who paid for photo ops. Okay, and that's so most people believe one or the other. And as we dig into this, you'll see there's no way these are photo ops. There's no way with the details that we're going to show here in a little bit.
I think I remember you mentioning that last time on your own thing, that this guy, I was like, yo, that is crazy. Like, that's so funny how it's like faking. It's like, as long as you had enough money, you could get a photo op with somebody and it could even just make you look important, which then could get other people to want to have a conversation with you because we're like, oh, you just spoke to so-and-so. Not really. I just paid the dude to fucking take a picture with me.
And
that's like magic in itself. That's like pulling a rabbit out of a hat type shit right there.
And I don't believe that I mean, I believe that could happen to some degree, but you don't have 4-hour meetings with the president of Lebanon for a photo op. You know, it's
maybe that's like his way of billing. Who knows? There we go.
Okay, Yitzhak Rabin. He was the prime minister. In fact, Yitzhak is, I found a document from a Freemasonic historian. His name is Bob Narn, Nairn, from Australia, and he listed known leaders that were Freemasons, and he said Yitzhak Rabin was the Grand Master of the Lodge of Israel.
Okay, then.
Golda Meir, I believe that was the first Israeli prime minister that he met with. Yitzhak Navon. I haven't dug too much in, but it seems like Israel has, like, the president handles the internal affairs of Israel, where the prime minister, you know, does the international things. But Herbert met with all 7 of both. So this is an interesting picture because in the middle there, that's a Steuben crystal obelisk. Those expensive. Were the gifts that Herbert would give to world leaders. In fact, I go over it in my last video. It's a specific obelisk called the Pillars of Griffin, and it has 3 18-karat gold griffins on the bottom. So the symbolism in this is insane. And Steuben crystal is the reason world leaders, in my opinion, the reason world leaders started giving this as a gift is it refracts light better than anything else ever invented. And we know how they feel about light and the light bearer and all that stuff. So this here, you've got on the right, Jerusalem Mayor Teddy Kollek. Michael Ravid, I heard him called an ambassador. I also heard him called consul general, which I don't know if that is like their attorney general. Then you got Stan Rader and then Prime Minister Menachem Begin.
Gotcha.
Another photo of him, Menachem Begin. Okay, so Menachem Begin was in Tel Aviv. Herbert was in Jerusalem. He found out Herbert was in Jerusalem, stopped his meeting, drove to Jerusalem to meet with Herbert. And when someone asked him about that, he said, if Herbert Armstrong came to Jerusalem at 2 a.m, I would get out of bed to go see him.
Ooh.
What?
Damn, okay.
Yep, just another picture of Begin and Ravid. Ravid was there for a lot of things. I can't really find anything about him. I did see, are you familiar with B'nai B'rith?
No,
that's like a Israeli secret society. And I saw a few pictures of him on kind of deep in their files and websites. Okay, this was I didn't get a picture of just him and Ephraim Kazar. He was the president. Golda Meir's in the background. It was just kind of a montage, but that was the meeting there with him. I think I've got all 14 pictures between the presidents and prime ministers. I may be missing one. Shimon Peres, that's right. I think I'm missing that one. Gideon Hausner was the Speaker of the Knesset. Now we're getting to Japan. He met with 7 prime ministers of Japan. This is Prime Minister Ohira. Once again, there's another crystal obelisk. Prime Minister Suzuki, another crystal obelisk. This is, I think, is this Tanaka? Yeah, Prime Minister Tanaka. I don't know what's inside that, but if I had to guess, it'd be another crystal obelisk. This is Prime Minister Miki. They were the first foreigners to meet with Miki, like before any ambassadors. They were the first people to meet with him when he became prime minister.
Yeah.
That's another picture of them with Miki. The guy on the right, a guy by the name of Osamu Goto. I can't find anything about this guy. He helped Herbert get a lot of meetings in Asia. If I had to guess, I would think he was some sort of Japanese intelligence. In fact, Stan Rader said in the interview on 60 Minutes, he said his name was an acronym for Go to Heaven, his last name. So I think the whole thing was just a front. I can't find anything about the guy, though. This is Prime Minister Sato. That might be the last one whose name I can't remember of the 7 prime ministers. There's one more, Nakasomi. It's an obelisk, but it's a different shape one because Steuben ran out of the last run of them. Or maybe more of a pyramid. Okay, Prince Mikasa. So this is Emperor Hirohito's brother. Him and Herbert became very, very good friends. Met with him numerous times. In fact, I've got one video of him having the entire room of senators toast Herbert. Herbert had up to 15 Japanese senators refer to him as their father. And they would fly on Herbert's airplane with him. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But here's another meeting with Mikasa there next to him.
And Stan is never too far behind.
Oh, and he was always there. Yeah, until the end. The last 6 years, he left. I have some theories as to why, but it'll take a bit to get into that. Probably get into that in maybe one of the next episodes. But there's Mikasa again. And another one. Him and King Leopold were the 2 people he hung out with the most. This is King Bhumipol of Thailand. Herbert met with him several times. He asked Herbert to help him get rid of his opium problem. King Bhumipol again. Again, Herbert was probably in Thailand, maybe. That was about the 3rd most popular country that he went to. He was over there a lot. So he met with a number of the prime ministers. Okay, this is China now. Okay, so a lot of people think that Billy Graham was the first Christian leader to go to China. He wasn't. It was Herbert Armstrong. He went in 1978 and 1984. So this is the Vice Minister of Education. Okay, this is another thing which I get into in the first video, is Herbert didn't just meet with world leaders. He met with ministers of education. He met with businessmen. He met with anybody who was anybody in these countries. So if it was just a photo op they're going after, he far exceeded those notions.
For real.
This, I believe, Prime Minister of Thailand. That's another Prime Minister of Thailand. These meetings went on for like 20 years, so the revolving doors, and then he was just meeting with whoever was next.
Wow.
So, please correct me if I'm wrong. The meeting is said that all he was doing is delivering a glass obelisk and getting a photo op. That is the standard. That is the official narrative.
No, the official narrative is that he went to these leaders to preach the gospel to them, which I've got some clips of him talking to them, and all it was Masonic language about an unseen hand coming from someplace to save ourselves from our affairs. But the counter narrative was that these were photo ops. Everyone in the church, and the narrative was, this is God's, because how else could he get these doors open, right? Unless it was God opening the doors.
Yeah. Next.
This, I believe, is another prime minister. On the left, of course, Stan Rader. On the right, Osamu Goto. He had those nice 70s sideburns going.
Oh, that's funny.
This is China. This is Deputy Ambassador from China. Okay, yep. This is Tan Ling. He was basically the vice president of China. This is Deng Xiaoping, who was the chairman of China. Which, I mean, like, I can understand a lot of other countries, but China, particularly this was late 70s. They had just opened up to the world. They'd been closed off for years. So why, like, how would anybody explain this? Like, I'm not talking about the official narrative. I'm talking about like what really went on. I don't know. It's like, you just don't get into China. At least then, but like not too long after this, then China's open to the world. Then we saw what happened with, all the jobs going over and everything. So I don't know if that's related or not, but it's interesting.
No, I think you're right, especially that time. Yeah, I don't think it would be like it was special for them to get there.
No, absolutely. On the right is Anwar Sadat. Of course, you got Stan Rader, Ogoto. The guy on the left is I believe that's the Deputy Prime Minister of Egypt. And what's that, 1974? Okay, yeah, Herbert met with Sadat a few times.
All right. Sorry, I keep on forgetting I have to change this.
Yep, there we go. There's the two of them again, Sadat which I got a decent clip of Sadat I need to put on my channel, where basically Herbert says that we worship the same God and Allah. And Sadat unveiled a peace project at this meeting with a synagogue, mosque, and church, which it didn't get completed, but it is, I believe, the same project as the one that just got done in UAE, United Arab Emirates. Is called like the Abraham Faith building or whatever. This was the precursor to that.
Did you show a video of this?
There was a clip of this in one of my videos.
Yeah, that's very. Yeah, if people go back and check that out, it's very interesting.
On my channel, because I'm doing clips, but I'm going to put the full clips of most of the things I show, so people don't accuse me of cherry picking, so they can see the context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very well done. One thing, and maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I am. Something that I had gotten a little bit out of the stuff I watched already. It seemed like he was very much about bringing like all three Abrahamic religions together, right? Yeah, that's weird.
I can't figure out the significance of a three-sided obelisk, because that's what it was. Most of them are four, and that's what someone told me, was maybe it represented the three Abrahamic religions unifying.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, because he was right in the thick of it.
Okay.
Hosni Mubarak. Now, the interesting thing about this meeting, this was 6 weeks after Anwar Sadat was assassinated.
That's right. You said that.
Why is the leader of a Christian nation who publicly supported Sadat's peace plan, which is probably what got him killed, 6 weeks later, why is he meeting with the president of Egypt? I don't know.
Hey, so the new guy's on track with everything?
Seem to be. Let's see. That's the Deputy Prime Minister of Egypt. This is another meeting. Herbert had a lot of these banquets and meetings that he had were like this one in particular. It was like 100 of who's who from Egypt. These weren't nobodies that were at these meetings. They were, a lot of college, chancellors and heads of industry and leaders of government that would come to these meetings. Ferdinand Marcos. I don't know how many times he went there, but it was a lot. And Marcos, notoriously corrupt guy. That was another meeting with him. I only saw 2 with pictures, but I think he was there probably at least a half a dozen or more times. India, Indira Gandhi. This is President Giri. I think he was a little before Gandhi was president.
Got you.
This is Dr. Singh. He was on the World Court at The Hague. And there's a lot of pictures of Herbert with him. This is the King of Nepal. That's the King of Nepal again. I think the first picture, the king was in Los Angeles.
Yes.
This next one, at the Los Angeles World Council of Affairs.
Yeah.
Was the meeting. And then the next one is when Herbert went to Nepal, which I got a clip of Herbert saying the King of Nepal asked him to do the same thing he did with the King of Thailand and help him with his opium problem. Emperor Haile Selassie, which if you don't know who he is, if you've heard of Rastafarianism,
Yes.
they believe Haile Selassie was Christ incarnate. So this man was revered as a god.
Oh, wow.
And there's Herbert meeting with him with an obelisk on the table. What's interesting is not too long after Herbert met with Haile Selassie, he was no more in the government. King Hussein of Jordan, Herbert met with him numerous times. King Hussein was the Grand Master of Jordan, Masonically. Another meeting he had with King Hussein. Stan Rader, of course, with him.
Wow.
What does it say? Jordanian ambassador to the U.S. Yeah, I don't even mention the ambassadors because they're like, he's meeting with emperors and kings and presidents and prime ministers. Ambassadors were like nothing for him to meet with. Another picture of him and Hussein. Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya. Goto and Rader right there with him again. Kenyatta was also known to be a pretty corrupt billionaire. King Juan Carlos of Spain, he met with him several times. Juan Carlos has been to Bilderberg meetings.
Oh, yeah.
This is Swaziland, the prime minister up top, and then King Sabhuza. They didn't go to Africa a lot, but they several of the nations they did. Another crystal obelisk. That's Suleiman Frangi of Lebanon. Like I said, Herbert had a 4-hour meeting with him. It's another picture of him with Frangi. Prime Minister of Sri Lanka. Not even going to try her last name.
You don't have to worry about it.
President Ladas of Cyprus. President Nouari of Tunisia, which the guy on the right was a Japanese Diet member. So that was another thing, which I'll talk about in a little bit here, is it wasn't just Herbert meetings. Sometimes he'd bring people from other nations with him, like ambassadors or diplomats or things like that.
Interesting.
This is Herbert meeting with the current president of Rotary International, as well as the incumbent president of Rotary International.
I can't. CIA's around here somewhere.
Probably, yeah. This is Herbert speaking to the
my God.
Rotary Club of Athens, Greece.
I love it.
This was known as the Billionaire Rotary Club.
Listen, whenever, just for the people that are listening, whenever the Rotary Club finally gets the notary that it's supposed to, that it probably deserves, remember this all first started on Smiley Face Killers. I started saying something is up with these motherfuckers. So don't forget that.
Yeah, he spoke to a number of Rotary clubs. And you know what's interesting with the Rotary Club is there just isn't much known about them. I mean,
I'm telling you, and I think the Lions Club, too. I was even telling Justin that. I was like, yo, can you look into the Lions Club for me, please? I swear there's something up with them, too.
They either had Masons found them or be instrumental in the founding. And I think really what these clubs were was there was a lot of backlash to the Freemasons, particularly in the 1800s. I mean, the first third party in the U.S. was the anti-Masonic party, turned into the Whig party. So they had to come up with other entities which they could, balance out their light deeds with or do their humanitarian works through. And so that appears with these, because I don't think they could openly do it as being a Freemason or a Rosicrucian or, whatever, Skull and Bones or, they had to use these other philopantric groups.
I don't remember what Joseph Smith ran under, but at the same time he ran for president, there was an anti-Masonic party, I think, at that time too.
He was on that ticket?
I don't know if he was, but I'm saying, like, I know all those things were running at the same, I think around the same time that they were in existence.
Yeah.
Like, unless he wasn't on that ticket, could he have actually been like, well, he's one of the Masons? Because he was a Freemason.
Right. Perfect cover.
Yeah.
Freemason leading the anti-Masonic party. Yeah.
No, or the thing is, the anti-Masonic party is there because Joseph Smith is one of the Masons running for president. Either way, it's like, who knows? But
it's a big
I'm
club
almost
and we're
positive.
not in it.
I'm almost positive that he was running for president or was thinking about it when they were in existence. It was just something I thought about. Because that's how I first even heard about that, is looking into the Mormons. I found out that there was an anti-Masonic party.
This is President Suharto of Indonesia. He was widely known as being a very corrupt billionaire as well. Another meeting with Suharto with, looks like a crystal obelisk. It's crystal of some sort. This is President 2 of Vietnam. This was during the war. Just interesting. Okay, and there, I just have some random pictures next of people that are just interesting. Mayor Tom Bradley of Los Angeles and the State Attorney General.
Sorry, I keep on forgetting I have to change this.
This is Senator Pete Wilson in his office in Washington, D.C. This is Vernon Walters, the U.S. permanent representative to the UN. Herbert did go to the White House. They had the little ambassadors from Shanghai. He brought them over from China. They played in like L.A., San Francisco, D.C., and they're invited to come to the White House. That's Herbert meeting with Nancy Reagan. Okay, so these next couple of clips are from the magazine called the Worldwide News. So I'm going to have to minimize my screen for 1 second here. Give me a minute.
Not a problem.
And so in this one, this was one of the times Herbert went to Lebanon, and it states that he had a 4-hour meeting with the president. And where did the meeting happen? At the UNESCO compound. So the UNESCO, if I remember, is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization. Yeah. 4-hour meeting with and if you think about it, just logistically, these guys are busy guys.
Yeah.
The fact you even get 5 minutes with somebody, let alone 4 hours, that's something else.
Just to think about the amount of money that all this traveling cost.
Oh, it's huge. He had a Gulfstream jet. I mean, it was...
You know how much money he had to be generating for him to do what he was doing?
The church was a cash cow for him. I think there may have been money from other places too, but church was definitely a cash cow. This is him with Japanese Prime Minister Miki, and like you can see there, he was the first foreigner to meet the Japanese leader. So he met him before even any ambassadors of other countries did. This here, if you read the print, Herbert had some Japanese senators come on the plane with him, and they helped open doors for him to go to a lot of South American countries. So I'm not 100% sure how it worked, but this is post-World War II. So, a lot of countries, part of it was technology, the airplane and all that was just coming around. So people could, travel between countries quicker, but you had to be invited to go to a country. the UN hadn't been out that long, 20, 30 years. So a lot of these countries didn't really have diplomatic ties. So it appears like a lot of these meetings were countries getting to talk to each other for the first time.
And I wonder how much of the guise of, well, I'm meeting with the Ministry Department of Education, how much, harm could that be? Yet the Ministry of Education is a cabinet position. It's a high ranking position within any country.
Mm-hmm.
And so it grants you access into a cabinet position within the government of the country that you're visiting. But yet if you go under the guise of, well, it's education and we're trying to promote education and blah, 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 it appears it's cloaked the best way possible. And if there is some nefarious stuff going on, the educational department, if I'm not mistaken, sometimes is also met with the Department of Culture. Isn't it Ministry of Culture sometimes in different countries?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you have access to almost like the socio-demographics as well as children. I hate to say it.
No. There was a lot of access to children.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you think about it too, like, what type, we know we were much more homogenous now as a world. This could have been some of the steps of that happening.
Yeah.
Where ministries of education between countries share information on, basically how to brainwash people.
Right. Anyway, sorry.
No, good.
The next clip, just let me read this here. Just talks about the Japanese senators being on the plane with him, and they opened up doors in Brazil, Guatemala, Panama, Ecuador. What does it say? Peru, Dominican Republic.
Oh.
Then they went. It says in Washington, the delegates met with the Undersecretary of State, basically Kissinger's assistant. And then they went to Pasadena, which that's the other thing that's crazy too, is like these guys would be at the college a lot, but some of their kids went to the college. And some of the stuff, I know how a lot of the stuff looks, but I don't, unless I actually have some documentation, I don't like to jump to conclusions, at least publicly.
Right. Right.
If it's speculation, I'll call it that. But regardless,
Right.
all this just stinks.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
And Nick and I have run across, and it's like you said, perfectly said, it's speculation because you weren't there. You didn't see that child walk through the doors of these schools and see his name on the roster. So it's what you find or what you read or what you hear. But you do hear of some of these high-ranking political families or families that were affluent that they would sign up their kids for this. They were all about it.
Right.
Yeah, totally right.
Well, because at some level, from my understanding of how the world works, if you're high up in the world, you're high up into the world's belief systems. They're all looking for a one world government, a one world religion, one world bank, all that stuff. So it's birds of a feather flock together, and so that's like you said. So they're willing to send their kids because that's part of the work that's happening that they've been wanting for thousands of years. And this next clip is interesting because I think this is Stan Rader talking. Let me just read this one. In order to fully appreciate the significance of Mr. Armstrong bringing these Japanese congressmen to Israel, okay, so they came with him to Israel. You have to consider the enormous political significance. This was the first official Japanese trip to Israel. And it comes at a time when Japan, due to its critical dependence on Arab oil, has been forced into a strong pro-Arab position. We all know Japan's position in economic and political affairs. So this, and I promise you, because I've looked, was not in the newspapers, but this was the first time that Japan officially visited Israel was with Herbert Armstrong.
Wow. That's interesting stuff right there.
I have a side tangent question. Were all the meetings for 4 hours?
No.
Is that the standard?
It's
standard billing,
like,
right?
It seemed like it was 4 hours here, 4 hours there, and that's
Consultation.
I'm sure a lot of them were, but like I listened to a clip the other day. He said he was with Juan Carlos for like 40 minutes, or he was with so and so for 40 minutes or half an hour. But it seems like most of them were anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. Some were longer.
The first consultation is 4 hours, and the follow-ups are 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you're just going back for your prescription now.
I wish I could have been a fly on the wall.
Yeah. Shit.
Okay, let's see this next one. This next one is just discusses how the timing of how Herbert was met with Hosni Mubarak of Egypt 6 weeks after Anwar Sadat was assassinated. That, to me, if you really think about it, that's crazy. Because he even admits in this article, like, they were still on lockdown. Like, there was checkpoints everywhere. I mean, to have a leader be assassinated in a Muslim nation and to have a Christian denomination leader there 6 weeks later for a 30-minute televised interview. I mean, that's very odd.
Yeah.
This was his trip with Menachem Begin. This is where he mentions that Begin said he'd get out of bed at 2 a.m. to come see him if he was in Jerusalem.
Oh, nice.
Okay, this is Prime Minister Tanaka of Japan. No, I'm sorry. I missed one there. Which one do you got there? I don't have that one in my... Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm sorry. Did you skip one?
Oh, I think you put these in at this point. Maybe, unless I left one out or something.
I may have gotten out of order. That's fine. Okay, you can go to the next one. Oh, no, that's the one. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, that's Prime Minister Tanaka of Japan. And what's nice is it's probably big enough that everyone can read it if they pause it. He said he had a meeting with Tanaka, but wanted to get he wanted him on the cover of his magazine. So he went ahead and pushed a meeting up ahead just to get a photo with him, and then had a meeting again several days later. So as I mentioned this in my first video, it's crazy. It's like, okay, new prime minister, I want you to change around your schedule. I know I got a meeting with you in 2 days, but I want to meet with you now so we can do a cover story for you on our magazine.
Wow.
And like who talks to world leaders like that? Not only who talks to it, who actually gets them to comply.
Yeah.
That's a major pull.
Yeah. No, like that's like honestly, it makes me think it's just it's excuse or a cover for something else.
Any thinking person would probably conclude the same thing. Yes.
Or he was, I mean, like you said, high ranking. You know, he was making his weekly rounds at all the chapters around the world.
Very well could be. Okay, this next paragraph, the second highlight of it down, is interesting because there was meetings he went to that were not photographed. And this one was with Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. Prince Bernhard was the co-founder of the Bilderberg Group.
Oh.
So
yes,
he met with him several times.
Interesting.
And I forgot to mention when the whole Leopold thing, that King Leopold is so controversial because of the Free Congo thing. And he was responsible for having, was it genocide? I think they ended up finally calling it for in the Congo.
I think that was his predecessor.
Okay.
Like it may have been his grandfather.
Okay.
Leopold II. Oh yeah, they butchered. They said they think it was like 10 million people or something.
Yeah.
So Leopold III, though, like I can't find anything about this guy. He had a foundation, and I guess the church supported it, and he'd go to all these remote places of the world. But I've not found anything on it. I wonder if maybe some of the newspapers over there wrote about it. But he's kind of a mysterious guy. Just my own speculation. You know, people think that kings, they step down and then they have no influence. I don't think that at all. I think they hire a prime minister to do the dirty work, and then they just pull the strings behind the scenes because, I mean, they all have billions of dollars. You think they're just going to give that up?
And the whole premise of being a king is that you have divine intervention from God, that you've been blessed with this bloodline, and therefore you are a direct descendant from the house of David. Right? Isn't that the whole premise of royalty?
Herbert bragged that he was descended from David.
Here we go.
He had his lineage. I've got like, he had pictures of it. He goes back to Edward of England and all that. And, you know, it's, in fact, when he was with Haile Selassie, they were both bragging that they were Solomon's descendants.
Doesn't, that was even something that happened with, I can't remember if it was, I think it was Italy when they went into Ethiopia. At that time, the person who was running the country thought that they were a descendant from King Solomon. And they went in there and took an obelisk and the Lion of Judah at that time from them. Speaking
of the Ark of Covenant, that's what they say, that somebody had left it in Ethiopia on purpose. Because apparently isn't Ethiopia the one that contains, and when Teresa sees this, she can correct me because she knows more about this than I do, but they have the copy of the most recent Bible in terms of lineage to when Jesus was walking, or something like that. That they're in that possession and they still practice. What is it? Coptic Christians, Coptic Christians, and that they still practice the religion that Jesus was espousing. Closer than the Catholics and the other Christians. Right. Again, this is all what I've heard. I wasn't there.
No, I've heard the same thing. Yeah, and the anybody that wants to like brag how much they were related to Solomon, if you know your secret societies, you'll understand the tie-in there. But yes. So this next clip here talks about another visit with Prince Bernhard. In the middle, it says 2 days later, Mr. Armstrong was received by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, and that he pledged his cooperation for his World Wildlife Fund, which he was the head of World Wildlife Fund too. And anyways, people can read that. This next clip, the one you've got up right there, that is Princess Diana's father. And but in this article, it mentions that they went to the Rothschild estate.
Interesting. That's another thing that I heard, that the royal family that's currently occupying is a counterfeit royalty, and that Diana had more royal blood in her than the actual ones that sit there in Buckingham.
Yeah, I've heard some stuff about that too. Like Charles brags that he goes back to Transylvania and like the Slavs and things like that.
I don't know. I've never done a deep dive or anything like that, but that's interesting that he met with Diana's father.
Yeah, like once again, if these are just photo ops with world leaders, why? I mean, I think they call him Lord Spencer, so he had some sort of title, Lord or maybe a marquis or something like that. But right. Yes, it wasn't just the figureheads that he met with. He was meeting with anybody who was anybody. And so, like one clip I've got from like Stan was Herbert's assistant for most of the time they went around with world leaders, but the last 6 years was a guy named Aaron Dean, and Aaron Dean's with one of the breakoff groups from Worldwide, and he's just he's a Herbie cheerleader, and so like they sugarcoat like all these meetings as to what they were, in my opinion. But he mentions how they went to the Rothschild estate for the whole day with Charles and Diana. And I mean, anybody should know that those aren't good bedfellows to have, you know. It's so in all of this, I try to take I'm trying to think of how I'd describe it. I try not to, since there's not a whole lot of smoking guns, but I know how things look. And obviously were things that were not as they appear to be, but I try to take the least common denominator maybe in this and let people just make their own decisions for themselves. I do have some speculation on these things. I mean, because I've done enough research into the occult and world history and all that to know that Christian church leaders shouldn't be meeting with these guys.
Do you mind me asking what those opinions are?
No, I don't mind at all. Part of it, I've got 2 more videos to release that get into like, okay, for instance, CIA or government intervention. Let's just say the official narrative is true. Herbert was meeting with leaders that Kissinger couldn't get to. Okay, so you're telling me they weren't debriefed by the State Department when they got back to the U.S.? You know, like several of the leaders, like Menachem Begin or King Hussein of Jordan, would be like, hey, I know you're going to see Anwar Sadat in 3 days. Can you tell? And he gave them messages to relay back and forth. So if you're telling me that the government didn't get involved when he came back to debrief him, at the very least, of course that would have happened. But I'm more inclined to think, much like with the Mormons, the evidence that's coming out, that they used Herbert and the church as an avenue to get into some of these countries.
Agreed.
Radio Church of God, which was the precursor to the Worldwide Church of God, they were the largest buyer of advertising in the world. And they supported a lot of those pirate radio stations like Radio Swan and the one that was off of Europe, Radio Free Europe, I think it was. They supported a lot of that. So there definitely does seem to be some sort of letter agency involvement. And I'll get into some of that in my next video. So I don't doubt that for a second. There was also tremendous mind control, like you wouldn't believe. Herbert was able, and I think a part of that was the college. He was able to cookie cutter himself, and he got an entire organization of 150,000 people to not disagree with him about anything.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow. I almost want to, I'll speculate for you. I almost want to subscribe to the inclination that he was on the Alphabet Boy payroll.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's a cover-up for one of those.
You know, it's one of those things where they try Kissinger can't get in, so they'll try something else. Mm-hmm. If not, it's a girl next, or it's a guy next, or it's something, whatever will allow them access in. And then and like we had spoken with Justin, you know, with the Catholics and then the Mormons, they go into these countries and they are able to meet with top head officials and top leaders in these rural countries. I'm sorry, there's a jet flying over. And somehow, some way or another, it's all of a sudden becomes unstable. And then like a de facto type astroturfed person is installed. And I don't know.
Herbert and Stan bragged that at least 7 nations fell within weeks of them visiting.
That is so weird to me.
Herbert, I've got a clip of him, and it'll probably be in the next video, if not the 4th one, where he talks about Allende of Chile being a CIA operation. That was never the narrative. The narrative was suicide. In fact, his family always said there was foul play, and they dug up his body in 2012, and it was still ruled a suicide.
No. Wow. And then you have the dirty wars of Argentina, you know, and how all of that, you know, kind of was playing in the background back in the 70s. Damn. Wow. This is pretty big.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. That's
well,
what I was like, this makes no sense.
The next video I'm going to get into, I'm going to go over the decorations that these leaders gave him, and some of the leaders said about him. Like I said, I've got a lot of material, but not much of this is documented. But when you hear about what some of these world leaders said about Herbert and what he was doing, they called him a bridge builder. They called him, they wanted his work to continue. And if I'm going to go pie in the sky, like conspiracy theory speculation, I would say his job was to get nations that were not part of the New World Order into the New World Order.
That is interesting.
I could see that. I could definitely see that, especially if so many of them toppled right as soon after.
Yeah, that's what I found weird.
I would like to do a timeline. I haven't done that yet about where he went, with who and when, and then talk to somebody, or maybe even do my own study into the geopolitics of the time. Somebody has a little more understanding than I do, because looking back, I was 5 years old when Anwar Sadat was assassinated, so obviously I don't remember the details, but that was huge. Yes, what was going on with Israel and Egypt and Jordan and all that, and he was right in the middle of it all.
It's just, and then again, we're still in this, in my mind, really, that he's bringing along other members of other countries to Israel with him. It's not just, I'm going to Israel to meet with people and deliver a crystal. It's that I'm going to bring other people, almost like, oh, do you want to meet so-and-so? Yeah, I got you. Like, go with me on this next trip and we can meet him together. He'll let me in the front door, and it's like that bro thing, right? Where, oh, you want to meet him? Yeah, we can meet him. I mean, obviously it's not that simplistic, but I'm just saying that it seemed like like you said, he was the bridge between these countries, and they're all coalescing in that one area where.
Right. I would say probably about 25% of the time that happened, and that's exactly how it was described. Hey, the Japanese senators, they got me into South America, and I'm going to get them into Israel and Kenya and some of these other places. I mean, they did a project in Kenya. They started a school. I think worldwide put in like 20 grand. The Japanese government put in like $20 million to build a school with Kenyatta there in Kenya. And, or like the opium thing in Thailand, the king's telling Herbert, you're the only one that can help me with my opium problem. So they start 6 schools and then 12 schools to train the people to not grow opium, instead grow vegetables and how to make little trinkets. And they actually said that was more profitable.
Oh, come on.
And like, it's like, man, I wasn't born yesterday.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
To find out, Bhumipal was the wealthiest monarch in the world when he died, like $60 billion. He had more than the Queen of England.
Sure.
These were the types of people. So then the King of Nepal said the same thing. Can you help me with my opium problem? The same way he did in Thailand. Once again, I mean, I know what it looks like. Do I have the smoking gun on it? No. But if you're talking letter agencies, I think that everyone's done enough research to know. And what better cover is there than it to be a church?
Correct. No one's going to suspect.
Yeah, the church is such an easy cover. Oh, in the name of God, everything's always okay.
It's, yeah. And then again, you're able to, if, and then not only that, but it places the Mormon church almost toe to toe in the race with Catholic Church, in terms of power, in terms of influence. Yeah.
Well, I mean, from what I understand about the intelligence agencies, well, first of all, they're all highly occultic, but second is they all do the same thing. They know that, hey, our military cannot do an operation in your country, or that's an act of war. So instead, we're going to have our front companies come in there under humanitarian guises, and then we're going to manipulate. But the same thing happens in the U.S. I'm sure it does, where we've got people,
100%.
It goes back and forth. So it becomes this one-upping thing of who does it better, and we've got you by the balls and or whatnot. And yeah, it's a world that I'm just glad I don't live in. I mean, I understand how it works, but it's just it's no wonder I'd be stressed out. I don't think I can handle that. Sleeping with
it's all about making money too. I mean, look at what they've done to Central and Latin America. Yeah. I mean, it's who is making how much per day or per week? We got to get in on that. Yeah. I mean,
of course.
So, I mean, I think a lot of it too, and. If you ever want to know what the next crisis in the U.S. is going to be, look at the country that we're starting to occupy.
And then look at the resources that they have.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the leader of Rwanda, when the butchering happened in the 90s, journalists asked him, how come no one helped you? He goes, because our largest export's bananas. So if there's no reason for people to go in, yeah. They don't have, like Afghanistan, probably the best opium producing part in the world, or, wherever there's lithium batteries or wherever there's this and that. I mean, Japan before World War II, like they went on a resource binge, taking over places that had rubber and all these different things because they didn't. They're kind of a resource deficient country.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they import most of all their stuff. But yeah. Dan, this was amazing. And I know you're barely just scratching the surface, and this is already huge. I'm still curious about these obelisk stuff.
Yeah.
Like, why those of all things? And I know everything's super occulted, and I get it. Like, I understand, but Why that?
I bet you some reason specifically for that crystal too. I'm sure.
Well, being Steuben crystal, refracting light.
Yeah.
If they are Luciferians, they'll get the gist of it. But if you go back to ancient Babylon with Nimrod, some think he was the first Nephilim, or there's a whole lot of speculation about him, but he was definitely a world leader at the time, trying to unite the world. And I'm sure this, maybe you already know this, but for your audience, he was killed. And then his wife, since she thought he was a god, tried to resurrect him, get all of his pieces back together. And the piece that they couldn't find was his missing member. So that's what that has always represented is, and it goes deeper than that. It goes into Egyptology and all that, but it's regeneration. It's, but anyways, like all of those leaders knew what that meant. They knew what it represented. They had to.
Right.
So I think that's the guys hidden in plain sight. That was the guys that he was coming up. But one of the things that also lends me to believe that there was letter agencies involved, besides some of the more obvious ones, is the blackout, the media blackout.
Yes.
Find any of this stuff in a major publication, you won't find it.
You can't.
All this was from internal church archives. And so since a lot of people thought Herbert was the end time Elijah, there are people that like basically worship him, and they documented and saved every scrap of information. So that's how I was able to get all this. It was like because people elevated him so highly. There's like 5 websites called Herbert W. Armstrong Libraries, and they've got everything that they could find that the church ever produced.
That is incredible. That is
awesome how you got that. That is great.
What I would really have liked to find is the unedited meetings with these leaders, because those are still chopped up. And there's times that the narrator voices over what is said. So I'm wondering, like, was there something said that they shouldn't have, or, but yeah, either way, this when I first got the implications of what this meant, especially since I grew up in it, I couldn't hardly sleep for a week. I had to pinch myself. I'm like, you got to be kidding me!
Sure.
You can't write this script. It's almost too good to be true in a lot of ways.
Well, and I think when you grow up in such a, I grew up Catholic, and so when you start to come to the realization of these things, it is a little bit, shattering. It shatters your perception. But you know what? I do think that that's what it's supposed to do. I think this learning and this digging, if you're brave enough to stick around and see it all the way through, it allows you to start to see that they're all in on it. You know what I mean? And we, the peons, the plebes, or whatever you call us, are basically just fodder.
Yeah, I was going to say
for them.
Yeah,
disposable people.
Yeah.
And what's an interesting thing, I don't know if you guys have noticed it too, but like especially in the past few months, but definitely the last few years, it seems like the information that was kept secret, like under death oaths, is now openly being, like, there's YouTube videos about rabbis talking about teaching people the Kabbalah. There's Rosicrucians spilling all the secrets. There's Freemasons spilling all the secrets. It's like, that tells me that they don't care anymore. Like they're ready to make their moves.
Yeah.
And so this, at least for me, it's
the moves have already been made.
They're so past they're past the point of no return. Yeah.
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 Sadly.
So the secrecy isn't a thing for them anymore. They don't care. Right. Besides, if AI keeps getting as good as it is, it won't matter anyways. No one will be able to tell what's true or what's not.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wow. Dang, I can't wait for the next one.
Hell yeah. Have you looked into the Rotary Club more?
A little bit. I just looked into its foundings. I think the main guy that founded it was not a Mason, but the guys around him were.
Yes.
But they're just, there was not a ton of information about it.
I'm going to maybe see if I can find more hooked up with this organization, your church thing. I might. The Rotary International one seems way more questionable than all of the little chapters. Mm-hmm. And I do, in my opinion, believe that they may be somewhat associated with some of this weaponized human migration. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It seems that way. Like I said, it's just merely speculation, but
it seems that they have rubbed elbows with people that have been associated with that stuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Definitely something deep with that organization nobody's onto.
Well, like for your listeners, if you don't understand like how the occult works, or like Freemasonry, for instance, you got the checkerboard floor, so it's the light and the dark, and you've got the ladder going up. So the higher up the ladder you go, the more you have to balance your light and your dark deeds. And so you see it like portrayed in movies, like Anakin, you're the chosen one. You're supposed to bring balance to the Force, right? That's why Shriners like have children's hospitals, because so many of them are perverts and pedophiles. So they have to, whatever they do in the dark, they've got to balance out in the light. And
Absolutely.
so that's why so many of these people like Bill Gates and the Clintons and the Bushes, they all have these benevolent organizations, which sometimes I think they really actually do some good things. But it's their religion that they have to do. So to me, it makes sense that the most prominent voice of the 20th century of people, let's get back to keeping God's commandments and all this, is simultaneously going around to all these world leaders doing who knows what.
Right.
But with the presence that he carried, because if you look at like the Sadat or Hosni Mubarak or these meetings, these guys were like children to him, like next to him. You see them talking to Barbara Walters. These are authoritarian guys. Yeah. You could tell at some level they recognized a higher authority.
That's what I was saying, is that the way that you were describing how they were perceiving him and how they were receiving him, it's almost as they were they not children, but they viewed him as a higher authority or a higher being, or the hierarchy is very evident, put it that way. The pecking order is very evident.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I looked in, I reached out to some Masonic halls and Rosicrucian order, and they were both like, yeah, we don't give out that information. So,
well, at least you tried.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
you tried.
Sometimes it might be like, oh, if you come on a Saturday.
Right.
Wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next one. And I know you got time to work on your own. And as soon as you're done with it, I hope you come back on and do it here.
Okay. Well, I mean, the one thing I could go over next, before I even put those videos out, which I'm hoping to have them both done by October, like the end of October. I should have one done in the end of this month. But the thing I could talk about is the internal mechanisms of the church and how it was set up.
Oh, yeah, I would like that.
Let's do that.
It was set up like a secret society.
Oh, I would love it. I would love that. Yeah, we'll have to get you back on for that before you even finish the other stuff.
Corporations are too, if you think about it. I mean, some of it's a necessary thing.
Right.
You know, your average worker doesn't need to know what the CEO is going on, but it's very compartmentalized, and you have your inner circles, outer circles, and whatnot.
Right.
So
you are right. Just even simply for like tax breaks, secret societies and churches are going to have very much almost same structure in certain areas because that's what you have to do. Right. But yeah. Which is interesting in itself.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I'm definitely down for that. That sounds great. I would love to actually have you do that because I really don't know anything about the church. I just know that this guy's seeing way too many people. For like the silliest reasons, in my opinion.
Well, and it's like once the church was set up to take care of itself, like his son was in charge for a long time, but his son couldn't keep his pants up. And so on record was with over 200 women from the church.
Oh, he was prolific.
Very prolific. So he had to come back from meeting with world leaders to put out fires often. It happened several times. But like once 1968 happened, he was 200 to 300 days a year was going around the world. So he wasn't even really involved with the church. He'd come back for photo ops. He'd come check stuff. Everyone thought he was at the reins, but he wasn't. This was what he was doing. This was what he called the work.
Oh gosh.
The work.
Which is, yeah, that's interesting.
Work.
I've heard other people use the phrase "the work" before.
Oh yeah, capital W too.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. All right, Daniel, do you want to plug yourself again and let people know where they can find your amazing work?
Yeah, I sent you an email out, so you could probably tag it in the video here. Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, X. Those are the 4 platforms that I use. So
awesome.
Don't look me up on any one of those. I'm not on X as much as I used to be. It doesn't seem like there's much interaction on there in the last year. I don't understand why, but yeah, everything else. YouTube is probably the primary thing for the videos. like I've put all of them on Rumble of the main ones I've put out, but like I'm putting the clips on YouTube of the unedited, or I shouldn't say unedited, the versions I have of the meetings we had with world leaders. Because sometimes I'll take snips of them and put them in my videos to show, but I want people to see, especially those that still are part of the church.
Yeah.
Like the breakoffs, that I'm not making this stuff up. It's there. You can see it in its full context. So.
All right.
No,
and I will definitely include any of the links you give me. They will be down in the show notes, so people go check his stuff out. Thank you again, like I said, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Some solid work. Really looking forward to the next one or two. For sure. Lisa, did you want to let everybody know where they can find you if they want to get in touch?
Sure. On X, it is Solis Lisa, and I want to plug in our occultresearchinstitute.org website. A lot of people have contributed to that website. Everything from true crime, mental manipulation, signatures of life, or just information that people have kind of compiled on their own, written about it, and added it. So if you like to read, that would be a good place to start.
Thank you very much. Yes, definitely go check that out, and that is in the link tree as well. And that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.